Hello, hi to everyone who has joined. It's nice to see so many people taking your time to listen to our talks. As Rainer said, I'm going to talk about the fjord city of Oslo today, and this is very exciting for me because I live in Oslo, so I get to sort of live the fjord city every day. And right now, and for a couple of decades, Oslo has been and still is home to one of the largest waterfront redevelopment projects in Europe. And we're seeing the biggest urban renewal project in Norwegian history. So this is very, very exciting to share this. Here you can see a map of Oslo, and that orange line you see there, this is the new harbor promenade stretching from the east to the west. So basically about 228 hectares of formal industrial land running along the fjord is being transformed into a series of mixed-use neighborhoods, which is then again connected by this 10 kilometers, 6.2 miles long harbor promenade where people can bike and walk, run, do water sports, and just enjoy the Oslo fjord. So this urban renewal project, this is what I want to talk about today. I wanted to start with this photo, and this is from the early 1970s in Oslo. This was how parts of the waterfront looked back then. As you can see, it was very industrial. We had just found the oil back in the late 60s. As you can see on the image here, we are building oil platforms. Down on the left, to the left, you see an oil platform. So we built them downtown Oslo, and then we would tow them into the North Sea when they were done. We were building ships. There were shipyards in Oslo. There were dry docks, mechanical garages. And all of this was taking place in the very downtown area of Oslo. So there was very little access to the fjord for the public. And if you ask people who grew up back then in Oslo, they would probably tell you they didn't even want to go close to the fjord because it was so polluted. Now, the first development in what is now known as Fjordbyen, the fjord city, it started with the area of Aker Brygge, the Aker docks, back in the 1980s and 1990s. And that is this area that you see here. This is the Aker Brygge. This is what it looked like in the 70s. And on the next slide, you're going to see what it looks like today. Quite different. So it's been redeveloped. There's a lot of modern architecture. There's public spaces, green spaces, and most importantly, a very accessible waterfront. Norwegians like to have access to water. We have a deep connection to water, probably because we have the second longest coastline in the world. Here you can see the harbor promenade, where you can stroll or just sit and people watch or enjoy a nice meal at a restaurant. There's a boat harbor, there are kayaks for rent, green spaces, and this is really what the fjord city of Oslo is all about. People enjoying the fjord at the waterfront. Now, I wanted to mention this area, Aker Brygge, because this was where it all started in the 80s and the 90s. But today, I'm going to talk about this part of Oslo. And this is a bit further to the east. This is the eastern bay, which is known as Bjørvika, which means, it's an Old Norse word, it means the bay of the city. So in the front here, you see a container harbor, and in the back, you can see some warehouses. You can see the highway is running along the waterfront. And the central station is that brown building you see there. This image is from around the late 90s, I think around 1998 or 1999. And I remember when I moved to Oslo back in the year 2000, because I grew up just outside of Oslo in the countryside, there were signs all around this area saying no entrance. And I remember that in people's minds, the waterfront in this part of town, it felt really far from the city. which I guess it shows how, distance isn't always a matter of physical distance, but it's also a mental thing. We felt far removed from the fjord in this area of Oslo. Today, however, this part of Oslo looks different, as you'll see in the next slide. Now, first I want to mention that in the late 90s, the city council in Oslo, they decided to remove the containers, remove the warehouses away from the waterfront, and then redevelop this whole area so that Oslo could become a true fjord city, where the fjord is accessible to the locals and to visitors. So if you look at this photo now, and I'm going to show you the next slide, you can see what this has turned into. So this is a quite recent image. So we went from this to this. This is what it looks like now. So basically a whole new neighborhood has risen out of the fjord. So there are 4,000 to 5,000 condos that have been built. There are 20,000 jobs in this area. It's estimated that about 30,000 people will travel to this new neighborhood every day. They're building a school right now. Actually, you can see there's a construction site down on the middle to the right. There's daycares, there's supermarkets, shops, restaurants. There are cultural institutions, but most importantly, there's a lot of public space. So a great deal of care has gone into stitching this waterfront area, this new area, into the rest of the city, so that it doesn't feel, cut off or unwelcoming. And you'll notice if you come to Oslo, that this new neighborhood, it merges very nicely with the city, because it was very important to us that the fjord city didn't become a segregated area for just a few people who could use it, meaning those who could afford to live there. We want the whole population of Oslo to come down there and use this harbor front and the promenade. Now, to be able to stitch the new neighborhood together with the city, you can't have a highway running along the waterfront. So, because the highway used to go next to the central station, and how do you remove a highway? You put it underground, or in this case, you put it under water. You see those two green lines going in the middle of the map there? That is the Opera Tunnel. It's a tunnel that rests on the bottom of the fjord. It was opened in 2010, and after this tunnel opened, there was an 80% decrease of traffic through this area. And today, the entire highway runs under the city of Oslo. So you can imagine the impact this does to traffic. Oslo is such a quiet city. Even rush hour is quiet. It's just something you have to come and experience for yourself. Now, we don't drive down here. It's hard to find parking even in this area. So we ride public transport. This is one of the new tram stops. So it's well connected with trams and buses, and there are bike lanes. And if you live in the suburbs like I do, I would never go down there with a car. You always ride public transportation. I want to talk about a few buildings, new buildings in this area. And this is the first one I want to mention. This was the first building that was done, actually, in 2008. So fairly recent. And this is the Opera House, the Opera and the Ballet in Oslo. It was drawn by a Norwegian architecture company called Snøhetta, the snow cap. They actually also made the Memorial Center at Ground Zero in New York. The Opera House is made out of marble from Carrara, Italy, and it has kind of these like sharp edges. It's kind of like a glacier, and it looks like it's rising up from the fjord. I'm not going to talk in depth about this building. I'll do that on the tour next year. But what is really cool about this building is that you can walk up on the roof, and you can see that here. People are walking on the roof and standing up on the very top there of the Opera House, and this has become one of the most popular things to do in Oslo. It's one of the most used public spaces in Oslo. to walk on the roof of the opera. It's an easy climb up to the top. Well, maybe not in the winter when it's icy, but you get great views and of the city and of the fjord. And the goal with this building was to create a space for people to gather. So not just for the ones wanting to see opera and ballet, but for everyone. And I have to just show one picture of the interior. It's pretty impressive as well. Big glass windows let in a lot of light, and these oak panels that give a very warm, inviting feeling. The second building is this one that was built, open 2016 or 17. And this was a new main library in Oslo. And back in 2019, it won an award for the best library in the world. You can see people also sitting there enjoying the waterfront. This is at sunset. That's why you have that nice light. So these are basically, there are 6 floors inside. You have a movie theater, you have scenes for various performances, study places, play areas for kids, workshops, of course, a lot of books. And then on the top, you have these sweeping views of the fjord. So it's a great place to just go to hang out, actually. I also want to show you, if you look just next to the right of this building, it's another building sort of sticking out, and that is student housing. So because the goal of this area is to have a mixed demographic, not just for those who can afford a condo here, but we want students, and there's also public housing being built. Third building I want to mention is this one. This is the new Munch Museum, opened in 2021, and one of the biggest museums in the world dedicated to one artist, which is the Norwegian painter, Edvard Munch. He painted the Scream, which you can see there, and it can also be seen in the museum. And this is a so-called futuristic building where all the concrete and steel is environmentally friendly and can be recycled. So all in all, this neighborhood has definitely become a cultural hub in Oslo. There's also some great views there. You can go up on the top of the building and you have really nice views of Oslo. And it's a great art museum as well. Now, I don't want to talk about buildings. I want to talk about some other exciting things going on in this part of town. And that is, for instance, urban farming. So 40% of this land is built on, 20% is for infrastructure, and then 40% is for public or green space. So there's a big field where they're doing urban farming. And this is just a 4-minute walk from the Opera House. So about 400 volunteers are involved, and visitors can come there, use it as a park. In the summer, they have weekly community meals. There's a bake house. There's a field dedicated to growing heritage grains. And it's really inspiring, I think, that we took so much prime real estate land, 40%, and we made it into public and green space. And it adds a lot to the livability of this part of town. So you can see the locals here can come and grow their vegetables. There's a lot of hangout spaces. Those are great buildings that are made with Norwegian slate. So a lot of space where people can sit and enjoy the fjord, soak up some sun, visit a cafe, sit at a restaurant. And people you see in the photo here are not just people who live there, but I would actually say most of them, they come from other parts of town or other parts of the world, travelers. So this is an area that attracts a lot of different kind of people. Here's another example of an open space, a public space, which we call for an allmenning in Norwegian, which is kind of the equivalent to a common space in Britain. And there are 7 of these allmenninger in this area, where you find playgrounds, plants. There's actually strawberry bushes growing there. You can pick strawberries in the summer. And then there are fountains, and there's a lot of public art. Like you see here, there's a couple sitting on the roof of the Opera House, and that's a tip of an iceberg you see in the back there. So one of many examples of public art. Now, of course, you can't have a fjord city without clean water to swim in. So there are swimming spots everywhere along the harbor promenade. This is just a 5-minute walk from the Opera House. It's packed with people in the summer, but also in the winter, you see people swimming. On a nice summer day like this, you can expect around 20 Celsius or 68 Fahrenheit in the water, which is, at least for Norwegians, that's plenty to jump in. Here's a new beach next to the Munch Museum and the opera. It's named the Opera Beach. Opened just 2 years ago. Great for families and kids. And imagine swimming right next to the Opera House. And another thing is the floating saunas. There are no floating saunas, all sort of dotted along the waterfront. These saunas have definitely revived the sauna culture in Norway. They're as popular in the winter as they are in the summer. Here you can see one sauna there next to the Opera House. It's become really, really popular thing to do. I wanted to end this talk, because I don't want to run over time. I wanted to end with this photo, which I think is just such a great photo. You see the Opera House. You see a ton of people sitting on the roof of the Opera House. What's going on here is a Red Bull water sports event. It doesn't look like this every day, but it shows the possibilities. When you city plan with people in mind, and I think this image here, it really shows the success of this neighborhood. So that's all I had, and as Rainer mentioned, next summer 2026 I'm leading a tour in Norway, 8 days, 7 nights, and we're going to spend 2 full days in Oslo. So we'll really have time to explore the fjord city. We're going to walk on the opera and perhaps try some sauna, a dip in the fjord. It's optional, but I'd be delighted if you joined. The tour is almost half full already, and you can of course find all the details on the Guided by website.